Okay, I want you to picture an apple. Super simple, right? You've probably got one sitting in your fruit bowl in your kitchen right now. But what if I told you the story of how it got there is one of the greatest travel epics in history? We're talking ancient forests, huge empires, even legendary figures. Seriously, let's dive in.
Because that's really what this is all about. We always think of history as being about people, right? Kings, queens, generals. But some of the biggest stories are actually about the things that travel with us. And this is the story of a fruit that didn't just witness history, it actually helped shape it.
So, to find the beginning of our story, we have to go way back, thousands of years ago, long before the first big cities or empires, to a place that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a fairy tale. That's right, in the Almaty region of Kazakhstan, and get this, the name Almaty literally means father of apples. There are still these huge, sprawling forests where the original wild apple trees grow. We're not talking about a few trees here and there. This is the cradle of apple civilization. And here it is. This is our main character, Malice Siversi. This is the wild ancestor, the great-great-great-grandparent of pretty much every single apple you've ever eaten. Whether it's a sweet Fuji or a tart Granny Smith, they all started here. Now, check out this number, because it's pretty staggering. Genetic research has shown that over 90% of the DNA in all our modern apples, it can be traced directly back to this one wild species from the mountains of Central Asia. That's just an incredible, unbroken lineage. So, you've got this wild mountain fruit. How in the world did it manage to conquer the entire planet? Well, it didn't do it alone. It was smart. It hitched a ride on one of the most important networks in all of human history. You know, we think of the Silk Road as being all about silk and spices, right? But as merchants and soldiers and travelers moved back and forth between East and West, they carried food with them. And the apple? It was durable, it was delicious, it was basically the perfect travel snack. And this timeline just shows you the sheer scale of that journey. From its home base in Central Asia, it spent over 1,000 years just moving along these trade routes. By the time the Roman Empire was at its peak, they weren't just eating apples. They were systematically growing them, figuring out the best ones, and spreading them all across Europe. Now here's where it gets really cool. The apple's journey was also its evolution. As these apples moved into new territories, they started to cross-pollinate with local wild apples, like crab apples. This constant genetic mixing is the reason we have such a mind-boggling variety of apples today. It was literally transforming as it traveled. So the apple wasn't just becoming a staple food. It was doing something else. It was worming its way into our minds, into our myths, and into our most important stories. I mean, our relationship with the apple is ancient. We have archaeological proof that humans have been eating and using apples for at least 6,500 years. The ancient Greeks and Romans, they were already masters of cultivation, developing new types and basically celebrating this amazing fruit. And because it was so central to everyday life, it became this incredibly powerful symbol. For the Greeks, it was a divine prize, one of the great tasks of Heracles. For the Norse, it was literally the source of immortality for their gods. And of course, in Christian tradition, it became the ultimate symbol of temptation and knowledge. But here's a little twist you might not know. If you actually go back and read the original text, it never says the forbidden fruit was an apple. It just says fruit. The whole idea that it was an apple is a later cultural interpretation, something that got cemented over centuries of European art and storytelling. Why? Because the apple was the most significant symbolic fruit in their world. Okay, so the apple has conquered Asia and Europe. But its journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. It was ready for its next great adventure, crossing the ocean to the New World. And here's how that American journey went down. Back in Europe, people had perfected a technique called grafting, which let them create and preserve specific, reliable apple varieties. So when colonists set sail for North America, they brought these precious seeds and saplings with them. And then you get amazing figures like John Chapman, the real Johnny Appleseed, who made it his life's work to plant huge orchards all across the American frontier, making sure the apple had a new home. So all of this history, those ancient forests, the Silk Road, all the myths, the pioneers, it all leads directly to one place, the fruit aisle of your local grocery store. Every single one of these names you know so well is a living piece of that history,
A Granny Smith, a Fuji, a Gala, they're all direct descendants of that original wild Malus sieversii, just shaped by thousands of years of travel and human hands. They're the end result of that epic, epic journey. And so there you have it. The humble apple has achieved total global domination. From this one specific spot in the mountains of Kazakhstan, it has become one of the most widely grown and economically important fruits in the entire world. That is a true success story. But that kind of leaves us with one last big question. We took a wild fruit and, over centuries of travel and careful selection, we transformed it into thousands of different varieties to suit our tastes. But in doing all that, in shaping our farms, our diets, our myths, even our metaphors for knowledge, you have to wonder, how has this simple fruit in turn remade us?